Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters on KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 10 a.m. I'm sorry, 11. I'm still in the old mode where I'm thinking 10 a.m., but we're now here at 11 a.m. Central. Have a great guest for you today. We have on the line who will be joining us very, very shortly, Michael Grecco. He is a world-famous celebrity photographer, a.k.a. the Master of Light. He is also the executive producer of a TV show called Punk, as well as a separate spin-off series on that as well. So we'll dive into that and kind of do a deep dive into what he has going on with that. For business owners, he will also give us, the layperson, some tips and some ideas on how to really kind of jazz up your photos, give them the wow factor, which I know I need. So stay tuned. Keep listening. If you are a long-time listener, you know we always reserve just the few first moments of the show to tell you a little bit about what's going on in Houston and the Gulf Coast area when it comes to financial literacy. Houston Money Week, even though that is not going to take place until April of 2020, is already getting kicked off and started. We've had a lot of changes. As you know, I'm on the leadership team for Houston Money Week. Houston Money Week is a nonprofit community-based initiative to bring financial literacy and financial empowerment to the Houston and the Gulf Coast region. It is a group effort, really, by city, local schools, banks, for-profit businesses that are doing community reinvestment work. Anywhere that you're looking to get free financial education classes, you might find it covered through Houston Money Week. I encourage people to go through houstonmoneyweek.org. It is a dynamic site. If you put your zip code in there, they will tell you what free workshops that we have. Now, we're past April, so past tax season now, but we were working with the United Way and a lot of the local nonprofits through the 411 initiative, and so they would do free tax preparation for low to moderate income. That will most likely go on again next year. And as we're getting ramped up and getting started, just kind of want to get it on your radar. With that, let's go ahead and get Michael on the line there. Now, we were having some difficulties earlier, so let me make sure. Michael, can you hear me?
Thank you for the great introduction. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you can hear me on this side?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so we're good.
I'm in the backwoods of Wisconsin on a family fishing trip with my in-laws, and I'm being taught to spin cast and fly fish. So
nice.
It's been quite the adventure.
Nice. Well, and we've got the magic of live radio, so the listeners didn't take the tension of the 5 minutes of me trying to figure out how to get you. So we're good. We're good.
There's no. I mean, I guess it's the curse and the beauty at the same time. There's no cell reception, so I can't be working very much. So I went to the kitchen. So your wonderful audience can actually hear the interview, and we didn't have to worry about our cell reception.
Well, perfect. Well, we can hear you now, and I wanted. So the funny thing is, as I was doing the research and getting ready for the show, more and more of the photos that I saw on your website, which is michaelgrecco.com, I'm already familiar with them. I think most people, if they've read magazines, if they are familiar with any of the celebrities that you've taken photos from, the one that sticks out to me was the Johnny Cash one. I'm like, man, I've seen this. So I think a lot of people are familiar with you, but they may not realize it. The funny thing is that the video that was released for the promo for the punk documentary with Johnny Rotten and was it Marky Ramone?
Marky Ramone.
Marky
That's right.
Ramone, where they get into an argument. I did see that when it came out, so when I put two and two together, I was like, okay, this is going to be a great show here.
Good. Yeah, I put that video on my YouTube. I created that. The idea of that show was mine, and we were in development with it for years. And then John Varvatos stepped in and helped us get talent. And as one of the executive producers, I was sitting up front, and it was just so bizarre to have this ridiculous argument go on between the two of them. But it was entertaining, right?
Absolutely. I love it. So we'll definitely talk about that and do a deep dive into that. But I kind of want to start at the beginning for listeners to get to know you a little bit better. How did you get started in photography?
Oh, I mean, as a kid, I went to summer camp and learned the darkroom, and it was just magical to me to see a print come up in the developer and to be able to process film and see images on it. It was just it was magic. And then I realized, I would also go to the library and look at great photographs, and there was this feeling. To me, there was this deep feeling of being just very attached to these photographs, like feeling their power, feeling it was almost something very tangible that you felt. I wanted to hold them. I wanted to own them. I wanted to make them. I wanted to, So I sort of got hooked into it, as a kid, 12 and 13, and it really became my path. It became my path. I went to college. I was in the School of Communications at Boston University and studied photojournalism because they really didn't have like a fine art program, and that became a path for me for about the first 13 years of my career. I started working for the Associated Press, and I'll interject this. So I was a stringer for the Associated Press. I had an internship. There was a very, very bad blizzard a while back in Boston, and I skied into the AP office 2 weeks before my internship with a couple of rolls of film, and they put my images on the wire, and that started my career. And I would shoot, regularly, almost every day for the Associated Press, even in college. I'd fit it between my assignments, and at night I was a club kid, so as we talk about the punk show, and as we talk about the punk images and the book that we're working on and things like that, that's where that came from. And I did that until I became a staff photographer at the Boston Herald, and did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then People magazine asked me to join, what would be considered the staff of People magazine. So it's been a good ride. That's how I moved to Los Angeles, and been shooting ever since.
I love it and I want to get into the punk documentary here, but I got to get some business tips too. So we're gonna go back and forth here. But the idea that you were doing this photojournalism during the day and a club kid at night, and kind of this alter ego almost. Tell us. So there's a whole generation that aren't aware of punk or hardcore or the kind of do-it-yourself ethic. For that generation, take us back to that time when you were getting these photos. How did that develop?
Well, I was a very snobby music lover. I grew up in New York. I was born in the city, and I grew up just outside of the city, and would do museums, and was into the Museum of Modern Art, and I'd go look at photography, and I was into jazz. I thought rock music overall was really poor. There were a lot of bands that were created by the record company and overproduced and didn't feel authentic. But I was into Bowie and Lou Reed, Velvet Underground, Roxy Music. There were a few bands that felt authentic at the time, but for the most part, most commercial music was very commercial. And then, I was in college and stepped into the Rathskeller, commonly known as the Rat, and walked in, and my mind was blown. I think the first band I heard was the Boston band La Peste, playing a song like Better Off Dead and Spy Master, and it had great energy, and it sounded authentic. It didn't sound like the commercial produced bands of the late 70s and early 80s, the Kansases and the Totos and the Rushes and that stuff gave me the heebie-jeebies. I felt like it sounded to me like it was overproduced music. So I really, and it was a culture that, as a nerdy sort of alienated kid in high school, it was a culture that was very accepting. And I found a family, and, you'd be able to go out every night and see friends, and, you knew the bartender, and you'd get free drinks, and, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
I love it, and it's hard to explain that to a whole generation that hasn't seen this, but growing up with skateboarding and punk and hardcore music, there was a sense of community there. The commercialism was seen as not good, and so that's definitely one of those things. I know dark parts of my life, comic books, punk rock, and skateboarding helped me out of that. So how did that grow from your passion with photography and music into this eventual relationship where you're co-producing punk with Iggy Pop? How did that happen?
So my staff, basically, I have this deep archive. We've scanned about 650 images at this point, and I have this deep archive of images from the time I would be out every night. I would work for a little local, Boston rock magazine and little local magazines, and I have this deep archive of images, and my staff was like, you have to do something with this. Like, you really have to do something with this. I took the images to David Fahey of the Fahey Klein Gallery in L.A., and he's like, you have to make a book. And I happen to know Judith Regan, who I think she still has an imprint at Faden, and she was like, hey, you should do a book, but you should also do a documentary. And I had licensed the images of Chris Farley for the I Am Chris Farley documentary, and had a connection with this production company, and we started development for this show. And it was a good idea, and it was good enough that that Barbados came in on it, and helped get talent and Iggy Pop involved, and it became a 4-part series on the Epix network. So, and that right now we're working on another docu-series about music photographers. So, I like having my toe in the water of different things that are creative and different things that you can make and be a part of and be creative with. So
I love it. Now, that wasn't your first documentary, wasn't your first book. You've also written The Art of Portrait Photography, Lighting and Dramatic Portrait, The Art and Celebrity of Editorial Photography, Naked Ambition, which we'll talk about in a moment. But one of these your son actually helped edit. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started, I would teach, and I started teaching, 25 years ago, and at the Santa Fe workshops and the Maine photographic workshops, and I would be a speaker at the Photo Plus Expo in New York. And out of that, I was approached to do, because I had this talk called Lighting and the Dramatic Portrait, and out of that, I was asked to do a book. And I thought, all right, this could be cool, build the brand. And that was The Art of Portrait Photography. And then that I went with another publisher, and that became sort of a larger project called Lighting and the Dramatic Portrait. And it became a best-selling book. We sold 30,000 copies around the world for a niche professional lighting book. We did really, really well. We had licenses in Brazil and Taiwan and Korea. And the book was very successful. And then I wanted to do a coffee table book, and I think it was 2002, my ex-wife worked for one of the networks for DirecTV, and she actually, in part of her job was not only programming the boxing and NBC and MTV, and she also did the adult. So we were invited to the Adult Video Awards, and I'm a huge Fellini fan, and I thought I was in a Fellini movie. It was just wild, like just crazy wild. People in crazy outfits, and it was a bunch of characters. So we found a sponsor to help underwrite the cost of the shoot, and for 2 years we went and we did portraits. We did portraits of the people there, and we had also shot behind-the-scenes footage. And when we looked at the behind-the-scenes footage, the interviews were so good. People in that business are just very candid. They take off their clothes to work. They also talk about their lives very candidly. So we had great footage, and that became a book of portraits called Naked Ambition: An R-rated look at an X-rated industry, and a movie of the same name that was a big hit on Netflix for a while. It's now on Amazon if anyone wants to see it. It's on. It's a download on Amazon Prime. I don't know if it's on Prime. I don't think it's on Prime. And the Decider, that movie review website names it one of the 10 best sexy videos on Netflix of all time. So that did well too, and there's no sex in it. It's really a very straight documentary about the people, because the people themselves are very interesting.
And you actually met Stormy Daniels working through that, is that correct?
Yeah. I didn't. I spent a lot of time with a lot of the girls, and yes, I did meet Stormy Daniels. So
we didn't have a crystal ball and know that her name will be a household name in 2019, but even our children know about her. No.
And I guess she didn't have a crystal ball to know her story wouldn't get out when she accepted that $150,000, right?
Exactly. There you go. Well, so let's pivot now and talk about for the layperson, and so I'm a good candidate for this. What can you talk about something called the wow factor, and for lay people who want to do social media headshots or anything like that, every time I take a picture, I either have my thumb or a fingerprint on it. My wife's like, wipe your lens. What would you suggest to us?
For selfies you're talking about? Or just photographs in general?
I guess photographs in general. What should we be looking for?
All right. So most people these days are shooting with their phone camera, right? So that's a really that's the really common kind of thing that most people are doing. The first thing I say, if most people are shooting with their cell phone camera, is to clean the lens. Like, really, because a lot of people put thumbprints on it, but you have to clean the lens. So I think that's like just a really important thing to do, and I think that's a really important thing to do. The pictures look sharp when you clean the lens. You don't get flare and things like that. And then, there are two things that go on. If you're taking selfies, the lenses on those cameras, it's nice that Apple has this portrait mode, which simulates a longer lens, which absolutely makes better portraits. But you have to realize in most cases the lens on a cell phone is like this wide-angle lens, and if it's too close to your face looks very distorted. Makes your nose big, things like that. So that's another, that's another thing to think about. That's another thing to think about, is like not holding the camera too far. And then what happens if you tend to give the phone to someone, they back way up and shoot too far away. So there's got to be this happy medium of taking, engaging pictures of you and your friends, and where you're at maybe a medium distance, and the picture looks good. It's not too close and distorting the face. And then the next thing I think to think about is the light. It's like you either want to be in open shade or have the sun behind you, not making shadows all across the face, or if you're indoors, window light is great, or a lamp, or, you want to be illuminated, it's always preferable to shoot without the flash on. If you're in a dark nightclub, that's the only thing you can do. But I think that making sure the picture is lit well is really important also.
And I'm just smiling really big when you say that, because we're talking with Michael Grecco. If you go to the website michaelgrecco.com, I'm on the portfolios page, and when you say light, wow. These are awesome. I mean,
oh, thank you.
What options do you have if you're just using your phone or something? I mean, is there things that you can do to at least help? We're not going to recreate.
A trick I've done is take someone else's phone and turn on the flash on the phone and take it off camera, like walk 2 or 3 feet and bring it up high and then take pictures if there's no light. That's always a trick. Because when the light's off the camera, the pictures look better. So you can aim that little light in the dark. You can aim that little light in the dark, a separate iPhone or phone, and you can light your people that way. Just a nice open shade is just really good. I mean, I just think that that's something people have to be conscious of, because people don't look good, and the pictures don't look good if there's like noonday sun coming down on somebody's face. On most of my images on michaelgrecco.com are lit. That's what I do. I'm a professional photographer, and your wonderful audience is going to look at them and appreciate them, but that's not the situation that most of your audience is going to be in. Most of your audience is going to be, I think, using their phone. So, but if they can light, a light off camera, like 45 degrees to the subject and up a little high, up a foot or two above the camera is always pretty.
It's going to be that much more. It's going to be that much better if you take those factors into consideration. But you mentioned just clean your lens for one thing, basic stuff, but then also this stuff that you can do to get that wow factor in there. So we've got just a few more minutes, or about 5 more minutes before the show's up. I'm looking at all of the celebrities that you've shot with. And boy, we could just spend a time going through each one. I'm sure you've done that before. You probably don't want to do that again. But is there one particular story with a celebrity photo shoot that pops to mind most memorable?
It's always, I walk in with a concept, right, and realize that when celebrities agree to be shot, they're part of the Hollywood machine. They're doing publicity for a movie or a TV show, and so I figure out how to illustrate in a fun way, like the Will Ferrell shoot. If you can find it, we're about to put it up on my website. It's not up there now. I try to illustrate stories in a fun way. Polar bear rugs and props and ice skates for Blades of Glory, and my idea only goes so far, but when talent like Will Ferrell or Steve Martin get into it and just help make it magical, that really adds, because they're taking my idea, which is just a set of props and lighting and the hair and makeup and wardrobe and location, and they're taking static things and they're making them, they're adding energy to them. They're adding the charm to them. So that really helps us. That really makes the magic. And Will Ferrell and Steve Martin and actors and people like that are just fabulous to work with.
I'm trying not to smile as we talk because I've got the picture of Will Ferrell kind of seductively with the ice skate there staring at me in the corner here. I encourage people to go to the website, michaelgrecco.com, to see this.
Yeah, two-season Grecco, at Grecco. And it's like, so we go in prepared. Your audience probably doesn't realize this, but it's like, I might have Will Ferrell lick the skate. Oh, we should make sure the skates aren't sharp, because if he licks an ice skate, like, the last thing I want to do is be in the Hollywood Reporter as like giving Will Ferrell 20 stitches on his tongue.
Exactly.
Like, you're always like thinking about what you should be doing and what you could be doing and that sort of thing.
So, as we hit the tail end of the show here, is there something that I have forgot to ask you that you'd like to share with listeners?
No, I mean, be on the lookout. Next year, hopefully, the Days of Punk book will come out, and we're going to be we're trying to set up museum shows and gallery shows around the world for that body of work, and I'm just working and doing my thing, and for the next few days, trying to catch trout and bass.
Well, good luck on that. I hope you catch a lot of fish. And Michael, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I want to thank your audience for hanging out and listening, and take care. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Take care now.
And you have been listening to KPFT Houston.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.